Yeah, Nicolas Cage and John Travolta, their careers were on a roll in the 90s, and they collided in this movie called Face Off. Springboarding onto another John Woo movie after Broken Arrow because, why not? We're having some 90s fun here, so let's talk about it. Face Off. So Face Off is, like I said, another John Woo movie after Broken Arrow. Whereas Nicolas Cage was Hollywood's up-and-coming good guy of the 90s, John Travolta was Hollywood's up-and-coming bad guy of the 90s. So they were like, you know what, let's swap them. So Nicolas Cage plays bad guy Castor Troy, John Travolta plays good guy Sean Archer, and then they get swapped back, in which John Travolta plays bad guy Castor Troy and Nicolas Cage plays good guy Sean Archer. See what happens at the beginning of the movie. Nicolas Cage as bad guy Castor Troy kills Sean Archer's son. Sean Archer has an axe to grind against that guy, and so in an altercation, Nicolas Cage, bad guy Castor Troy, goes into what's called the greatest plot device that leads to anything ever. That's right, a coma. You can do anything in a movie with a coma, especially in the decade of the 90s. But there's still a bomb out there that Sean Archer needs to get the information from Castor Troy's brother, so he has a procedure done where they put Nicolas Cage, bad guy Castor Troy's face on Sean Archer's body. They form his body to look like Castor Troy, and then bad guy Castor Troy, Nicolas Cage, wakes up from his coma without a face, which I always thought that was a bummer. In the reflection, they only show his faceless face briefly, but he still had eyelids and lips, and I always found that weird. I would have preferred, he was like, just take one goddamn guess. That'd have been cooler. Eyes are all fucked up. Anyhow. So now Nicolas Cage wears John Travolta's face, and so John Travolta now plays the bad guy. Sounds very convoluted as I'm saying it. Probably didn't need to be that complicated, but I made it that way. So I watched Face Off for the first time in forever, and I liked it a lot more now. I mean, I always liked it, but it being forever since I watched it, I appreciated the deeper emotional scenes and the emotional moments this movie actually threw at me. First of all, Nicolas Cage and John Travolta, they're so good in this movie. This is actually the movie where when people are like, Nicolas Cage sucks, I'm like, no, but he was in Face Off. I know he has other movies that built his cred, like Leaving Las Vegas before this, got him a lot of notoriety. But for me, Face Off is the movie where I'm like, no, but he did a good job. Yeah, still, he's crazy as the bad guy and he's having a lot of fun doing it. But this movie actually required a lot more from Nicolas Cage and John Travolta than a basic movie would. See, it feels like Nicolas Cage sets the tone for Castor Troy. It being a movie, they always film these movies out of order, so I don't know how one thing led to the next. When you see Nicolas Cage, he looks like a complete maniac, crazy Nick Cage that we know now. John Travolta is just the stick in the mud good guy with the emotional weight of his life and the death of his son just weighing on his shoulders. Then they swap and John Travolta needs to essentially be John Travolta, the bad guy that we know and love, but with a Nicolas Cage tone to him, a Nicolas Cage twang in his voice.
It's like looking in a mirror, only not.
He's not just John Travolta, he's John Travolta who actually kind of sounds like Nicolas Cage. He's not just John Travolta, he's like, Sasha, what the fuck are you doing here? It sounds like Nicolas Cage and John Travolta went splat, which is what it would sound like and should sound like. Nicolas Cage, I don't get that. I don't get a John Travolta tone in Nicolas Cage, but emotionally speaking, Nicolas Cage played a bad guy, and then he needs to play a good guy who needs to act like a bad guy, but not convincingly enough for us. Just convincingly enough for the bad guys in the movie, but he doesn't always do a really good job at it. There's this one scene where he starts a fight in jail and he starts crying while he's starting the fight, but he needs to snap out of it and act like Nicolas Cage. I'm like, woo! He's a conflicted dude in the movie. He feels like a good guy who needs to act like a bad guy. He's just not comfortable acting like the bad guy. Even that scene where he first looks at himself in the mirror and he just freaks out on the mirror. It's good shit. Even love those slow-mo ridden John Woo emotional moments, like when they both turn their guns, they're both on opposite ends of this mirror. So they get to aim the gun at the person they hate, which is the person in the mirror, and they get to shoot that person. Granted, they don't hit jack shit except the reflection, but it works for them. It's an emotion. It's a good moment for them. Whereas when I was younger, I just wanted to say, okay, John Travolta, I just wanted to see him be an asshole, and okay, yeah, and then they're gonna fight. But this time, when John Travolta came and saw Nicolas Cage for the first time, and they had swaps of John Travolta's Castor Troy and Nicolas Cage, Sean Archer realizes what's happening. Nick Cage looks like he's about to throw up, and I would throw up too. I don't know, it messed me up. It was just emotionally heavy. That's a nightmare scenario. Actually, you know what? Now that I talked about him being in jail, I'm gonna talk about the jail. The jail is the weird thing for me. I don't know why. We're dealing with a movie where people can swap faces and surgically look like other people, but you get the feeling that procedure isn't well known. But then it's like they were like, yeah, but We live in a world where that technology is possible, so let's just have this prison that's off the books that has magnetic boots and looks like a prison that's in the movie Deadlock. I don't know why, let's just make a super prison. I guess when Nicolas Cage, Sean Archer, escapes, he needs to be presumed dead, and, you know, falling into water is a good way to do that. It's like, oh, did he survive? I don't know, we never found the body, I guess he's dead. But something about that prison, I'm always like, okay, you're a leap. A leap more than faces swapping. It's the magnetic boots. I don't know, it's something about that. They're in the middle of fucking nowhere. You don't need the magnetic boots. I love going back to these movies where you're like, oh, that's Thomas Jane in the prison. Then he got out and became the Punisher. This movie actually, I feel like the action in this movie is more memorable for me than the action in Broken Arrow. Castor Troy getting blasted by that jet engine, flying down that tunnel. I shit you not, when I hear the song Somewhere Over the Rainbow, I no longer think of The Wizard of Oz. I think of Face Off. I mean, that's not nothing. But the shootouts, while entertaining as hell and a definite step up from Broken Arrow, aren't what I enjoy most about the movie. What I enjoy most is the fact that this movie has a surprising level of emotional conflict and weight that comes along with it. Just the fact that this asshole's invaded this good guy's life, and this good guy knows that there's nothing he can do about it, then he has to get his life back. It's really twisted, invasive, thought-provoking, dark, compelling shit. Though Castor Troy, being a scumbag, he does have a solid dad moment. The scene where he just drags the dude out of the car and kicks him in the balls, beats his ass. Any dad would do the same. And I like the fact that good guy and bad guy both get an emotional look into the life of the other person, you know? Not just a look, but it hits them at an emotional level. Like when Sean Archer's wife brings who she thinks is her husband, who's actually Castor Troy, to her dead son's grave for his birthday. The son that Castor Troy actually killed. Castor Troy has to stand there and watch her just be an emotional wreck. He has to fester in the consequences and reality of his actions. Same with Sean Archer. Earlier in the movie, Gina Gershon, she plays Sasha, associate of Castor Troy, and he's like, one phone call, I can have your kid taken away from you. Tell me where he is. He just makes these threats to her, and then when he looks like Castor Troy, she's like, you need to go. I can have my kid taken away. You could tell he's just like, shit, I made that threat to her. God, that's messed up. She doesn't seem to like the guy. She's in this situation. She was probably young, got tangled up with him, and now she regrets it. Her life's just kind of captive. They both get this emotional look into the other side of things. When Nick Cage is there and he's the good guy, but they think he's the bad guy, you get this look into the villain life, and it just kind of humanizes the villains. I mean, they all seem like assholes and shitheads, but you know that bald dude, you know, you're like, oh, I'm sad he died. Maybe it's because he has this great line when any of your friends is just looking mopey, you know, they're just looking, you want to say that line to him.
What's the matter? What? You look like you just fucked your mother. Come on, let's go relax, huh?
I don't know, there's just that scene when Nicolas Cage is hanging out with Castor Troy's associates, and you're like, that'd be fascinating to just be in that situation for a day if they didn't know who I was. It's a neat look into the other side that can only be felt if you're seeing the movie through a good guy's eyes who looks like a bad guy. When the movie goes into its final third act action-ridden throwdown, it starts when they get on the boats. It starts to feel a little long, which shortly after that, it does end. I do love at the end of this movie, Sean Archer doesn't seem to have talked the adoption over with his wife. He just kind of like nods like, is it okay? Oh, I guess so. It's a pretty big deal. Did you talk it over? He seems to like just land this kid on them like, hey, here's a surprise, daddy's home. And then, hi, that's a weird, I think that is a John Travolta thing. Not that, hi, I know you need a thing, but I don't know. Families have things. How about a bop on the nose? Wouldn't that be great? It's just like, hi, I'm Jamie. Fuck is wrong with you? Your family has this is weird shit. I'm out of here. In the end, Face Off is a solid John Woo 90s action movie, but it's not just action. Face Off is a solid movie, worth watching and worth buying on Blu-ray. Funny thing, Sean Archer's blood type is O negative and Castor's is AB, so Castor is the universal receiver and Sean Archer is the universal donor. I don't know what that means, but that's their blood type. All right, so Face Off, have you seen it? What did you think about it? Whatever you thought, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.